Welcome back to another episode of Her Expat Life. We are the YouTube channel that is dedicated to bringing female expats, digital nomads, and entrepreneurs all the information they need to advance their global lifestyles. Please make sure to visit our website, herexpatlife.com, and follow us on social media to keep updated on all the new trends in the industry, as well as see a comprehensive list of our services. Today, we're going to be talking about a topic that has been a buzzword for probably the last 4 or 5 years. Everybody's talking about it. It's such a hype in the world of work, and that is remote work. And as much as this is such a wonderful opportunity that has come, especially out of the pandemic, and a lot of people are excited about it, it is quite a competitive space and sometimes a little tricky to get into. So, we have a special guest today with us. Her name is Michelle Coulson from Remote Rebellion, and she's going to give us some tips and some tricks to help you land that perfect remote job for you. So, just to give you a background, Michelle is the CEO and founder of Remote Rebellion. She helps people to design their dream lives with more freedom and flexibility by getting a remote job that they can do from anywhere. She's originally from the UK and has worked in recruitment for over a decade. And she was sick of the 9 to 5 office life herself. So she swapped the hustle and bustle of London for the beautiful beaches of Bali. Michelle has seen thousands of CVs and resumes and interviewed and hired hundreds of people across the continents and multiple industries. She knows exactly what remote first companies and hiring managers want to see and how to stand out in this competitive market. And she is here today to share all of this with our audience. Michelle, welcome to her Expat Life and thank you for chatting with us.
Hello, thanks for having me.
So, Michelle, let's jump straight into it. So, you made a very bold transition from a corporate 9 to 5 to becoming the founder of Remote Rebellion. What inspired you to make this leap, and what were some key moments that shaped this decision?
There was quite a few over the years. Like you mentioned, I was working in recruitment. I noticed a shift. I was hiring a lot of developers, a lot of UI, UX designers back in 2016, 2017. And I noticed a shift from the people I was speaking to. A lot of them were asking, is there a possibility to remote work? And that was, before the pandemic. So I nagged and pushed and pestered the organization I was working for. I said, we need to offer remote working. And I managed to get a hybrid model where we only had to go into the office on Fridays, which was a real big win back in 2017. So I had a taste of that remote working life. And then when the pandemic forced us all to 100% work completely from home, or a lot of us anyway, I was in London. I was not happy. I was just having a look outside my window. I'm looking outside now at the sea, and then I was looking outside at a building site and a train track and grey sky, and I was like, this is just miserable. Why am I here? So I figured the office is not going to be open for a while. It was 2021. So I asked my boss if I could go to Bali for a couple of months once we were able to travel. He said, yep, no problem, as long as you come back once the office opens. I was like, yeah, sure. I'll get away with this as long as I can, and then I'll go back to the real world, 2 months passed by. I had the best time in Bali. I was the happiest I've ever been. I was around people that understood what it was to live a different life and not just go with the standard societal expectations. So when that call came and my boss was like, okay, you need to come back now, the office is opening. This was about June 2021. I was like, hell no, why can't I stay here? I've been working remotely for the past 18 months. What difference does it make where I am? Yeah, I can show you that I've been doing it. I've demonstrated I can do it. And it was a case of, this is the company policy. So like that kind of, because we said so, that's the rule without actually giving a reason, doesn't fly with me, hence the name Rebellion. I'm just like, I need a good reason, and this is not a good reason. So I quit and started looking for remote work and realized how hard it was. It wasn't like getting an on-site job. And this was back in 2021, when it was a lot easier to get remote work than it is now. So, and I didn't know what was going to come, of course, but I thought, right, okay, if I have got this much recruitment experience, I'm good at what I do, I have a good network, and I'm still struggling, knowing all the stuff I know, then there's going to be loads of other people out there that are like me. And that's where Remote Rebellion was born.
Amazing. And we'll get to the name in a little bit because I do want to chat to you a little bit about why rebellion and what it means. But before we get to that, can you describe the initial challenges you faced in the early days of Remote Rebellion? How did you overcome any doubts or fears during this transition period?
I mean, the fear of going and putting myself out of my comfort zone into a new country, into a new place. I've been doing that since I can remember. So we moved a lot around. We moved around a lot as kids, only to Spain and from the UK. But then as soon as I hit 16, I've always been traveling. I've always loved traveling. So the fear of going into a different country and just figuring it out wasn't really a fear for me. I was just like, well, I've done it before, I can do it again. I think it's much scarier for people when they're maybe out of their 20s, like over the age of like 30, because things just seem scarier. Like whereas you do things in your like teens, 20s, it doesn't seem scary. So if you've done it before, you just do it again. I think people find it a lot more difficult as they get older, because you think about the risks more. You think about what if. Whereas people, when you're young, you don't do that. You just kind of go like and just dismiss things. And so I didn't have that fear. However, I've been telling myself my whole life, I can't start a business. I'm not a good teacher. I'm not creative. I'm not this, not. All of the things that I'm not. I've been telling myself either out loud or internally for decades. So unpacking that of having other people around me that could say, well, you could do that as a business. I'm like, no, why? They're like, well, why not? I'm like, huh. So there was that of like questioning the why behind something, but also imposter syndrome that we all talk about.
Yeah.
Who am I to teach these people this? Like, surely they know. And I just figured, because I'm an expert in this field and I'm an expert in how to get remote work now. I didn't think that then. I would say that's such a cringy thing to say. Who am I to call myself an expert? However, people kept saying, wow, I didn't know that. I'm learning so much. And these were people like in senior in their experience were saying, we learned so much, we got this. I'm like, maybe I am an expert. It feels a bit icky to say, but I'm going to go with it.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, almost every single interview I have, the big gremlin of imposter syndrome always rears its ugly head. And it's the craziest thing because from the outside looking in, I speak to such smart, intelligent, powerful, pioneering women, and they all say the same thing. It's imposter syndrome. So, like, yeah, thank you for sharing
Yeah,
that. It's actually quite
that's all
comforting
right.
to hear that it's, even someone like yourself who's been so brave in other areas of your life, still, when it comes to this entrepreneurial journey, is still facing this challenge.
And I don't anymore suffer from imposter syndrome, because the voice I'm telling, like, just because you're an expert doesn't mean you know everything. I think that's when you are not going to be learning anymore. If you really think you know everything there is and someone can't teach you something, there's a difference. You can be an expert and still have gaps in your knowledge. That's completely fine.
A teachable expert probably is the best way to phrase it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go back to the name because, as someone who identifies as a rebellious spirit myself, I find it quite intriguing that you've chosen the term remote rebellion. So, what does this personally mean to you? You've touched on this slightly already. And more importantly, how do you see it reshaping the future of work, especially for women?
So the rebellion name, so the initial company name was Grow the Right Way. And I say it now and I'm like, oh, it's so not me. The logo was not there. It just didn't stick. And I knew it didn't sit right with me, but it'll do for now, let's figure it out. And I spent ages. I must have done a list of like 50 different names trying to figure out a name. And I can't actually remember. I think it was like a comment on a LinkedIn post and someone came up with it and it was an instant yes, because a rebel is someone who goes against something where people are constantly telling them this is the way, or this is the way you should do it, this is the way it should. I can't stand that without a good reason. And when my boss said to me, well, you need to come back just because that's his company policy, and the just cause reason, I'm like, no. And I could see what was happening. I could see all of these companies calling people back into the office. I was like, no, we need some sort of revolution sounded a bit political, so it was between that and yeah, it did. So I figured, we need a rebellion against this. You got to come back to the office just because that's the way we did it before. And I liken it's very different, and there's a lot more to it than this. But I think back to when World War II ended. And suddenly all of these women that were working in men's jobs suddenly got told to go back into the kitchen and go back home because the men are back. We could have just gone back to normal then, right? We could have been like, yeah, you're right. Get back at home, women, and men will just do their jobs again. But that wouldn't have worked. And it's still to this day, decades later, we're still having these issues between females. So it's the same with remote work. I see it in a very similar light. We can't just go back to the old ways, but there is going to be these sticking points. There's going to be this tough journey as we get through it.
For aspiring female digital nomads and remote workers, what is one piece of advice you wish someone had given you when you were first starting out in your remote journey?
Ooh, I would say to ask why and ask why not. And also ask yourself what is the worst that can happen, and really think about that rather than thinking that's a negative thing. I did that before I started the business, and when I quit my job, or just before I quit my job, I was like, okay, what's the worst that can happen? I had a mortgage to pay in London. I didn't really have any savings. I was like, okay, so the worst that can happen is I don't get a job. I lose my house. I lose the house gets taken away from me. Okay, that's it. I got a roof over my head at my sister's. I've got food on the table. I've got family around that love me. That's not a bad worst case scenario. And that's the way I saw it. I'm like, I can take this risk. And yes, I'll lose my house. Yes, I'll have no money. But I've got a roof over my head and I've got food on the table. Now, I am so fortunate that I've got that. I know and not everybody has. But I almost feel like I'd be doing a disservice to my privilege if I didn't go for this risk, because I'm very lucky to have that safety net. I don't have the safety net of a rich partner or rich parents that can give me the money, but I do have that safety net of a roof over my head and food on the table. So it's humbling to have that, you know.
I really like that. Like, what is the worst that can happen, and confronting those fears, and then you kind of realize, well, it could be worse, and it doesn't seem so scary. Okay, so let's talk a bit about work-life balance. So many remote workers, many digital nomads struggle with work-life balance. How do you manage staying productive whilst living this nomadic remote lifestyle? And are there any routines or practices that keep you grounded?
Yeah, I've really been on a journey with this over the past 3 years, because I've gone into these cycles. Like at the beginning, I didn't really take the business seriously in the first 6 months. And I was like, I had this vision of self-employment where I'll do 2 hours a day and then just surf and sit in a hammock. And I was sadly mistaken, because that's not how this works. So I think the naivety I had at the beginning got quashed pretty quickly. And I've gone through that stage, and I've also gone through the 60, 70-hour weeks of hustling and getting loads of work done and not having a rest, and being in a beautiful place and just looking out the window and not actually experiencing it. So I've been tipping over the years, and I really now feel like in the last year or so, I finally found that balance. That doesn't mean that every day or every week or every month is balanced. It's some days there's going to be where, okay, I'm working too hard now. Check in with myself. Have I actually gone to do the things that I enjoy to do? Have I worked out? Have I done this? So I don't think I'm the expert to advise on balance, and it can also vary as well. The way women work and our balance is very different to men as well. So understanding my cycle has been a massive contributor to me, and understanding that there's going to be these days of the week where I'm going to feel like doing nothing, speaking to no one, and that's okay. So that comfort that I've given myself and that allowance has definitely helped me find some balance.
I really like that. Yeah, as females, the power of understanding your cycle is something that cannot be stressed enough.
Yeah.
And yeah, especially for like my generation, I guess, and older, like no one really spoke to us too much
No,
about these things. It's something that I'm only really tapping into in my 30s, shockingly enough.
same. I know, it's disgusting, isn't it? It's awful.
It's quite sad. It's quite sad. Like, obviously, I knew we had like a cycle and it somewhat impacts us, but like the phases and exactly how you're going to be or feel like four different people in 1 month, and how that impacts
Yeah.
work and your social life and everything. So, yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
actually a really good tip. Like, for females, just understanding your cycle can shift things incredibly.
And being okay about talking about it, like amongst your female friends, but also amongst the men in your life, so they can help
Yeah.
understand why you're being a psycho 1 minute and then lovely the
Yeah.
next, you know?
Yeah. Please, they need the education just as badly as we do.
Yeah.
Okay. What role do you think community plays for remote workers, especially women, and how has building or engaging with a global community impacted your own journey?
A lot of people who haven't gone into 100% remote work or into a digital nomad, one of the biggest concerns they have is about loneliness and about not having community. I honestly feel like I've got more of a community now than I did have in my home country, having lived in London for 7 years and being based there. I honestly feel like I've got a more enriching community than I ever had. And so, and for me, that means having a mixture of the places that I'm in, having a mixture of expats, locals, and nomad friends, because each one of those types of people give me something, and I'm sure I give them as well. So that's quite important to me, of understanding. And then I've got my nomad friends where I will see at various different conferences in different countries, and some of them I've seen in more countries than my friend of 16 years. You know, we actually connect with each other, and we're all like this little, it's almost like a school reunion every few months. It's really nice. So having those close people in your life, and not losing the people that matter, like your close family members or the two best friends on a weekly basis from home. They have their home life, and we lead very different lives. What you'll notice as you get into this lifestyle and start broadening your horizons and opening your mind is that you will leave behind some friends. You'll no longer connect the same way with some people, and that's okay. So to be able to release those relationships that don't serve you, that's okay too. It's not that you think you're better than them because you travel now and you're this. It's just you're on different paths, and that's okay. So I think it took me a while to accept that, and I wanted to cling on to these relationships that didn't serve me anymore. But now the people I've got in my life is the people that I want in my life, and I'm sure they want me. It's not this like battle that you have to have, like, oh, I didn't contact them again. Because if you really want to speak to someone, you'll speak to them.
That's so true. That's so true. And we outgrow relationships anyways in life. So if you are on your authentic path and authentic journey, then at least you're outgrowing the ones that don't really resonate with you on a deeper level.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, let's get into the meat of things. So everybody wants that dream remote job, right? But it is a lot harder than maybe some people realize. It's a highly, highly competitive space. With this in mind, how do you maintain authenticity while growing remote rebellion and standing out in this evolving space?
How do I remain authenticity is not something that I actually try to do, because I'm pretty outspoken, and I don't really, I mean, everyone cares about what people think. I think they lie if they don't, but I
Yeah.
try not to concern myself with being overly politically correct, or seeing, you know, how I am who I am, and I'm outspoken, and I say what I feel. And I've had the opportunity to get investment in my business if I was to promote hybrid companies, and it just does not sit with me. And that was a real good realization moment. Actually, I've got this money being offered to me for funding, for investment to grow my business, but it sits against everything that and I'm not anti-hybrid. I'm just anti-promoting it. I'm anti. I think there's a space. I believe there is a space for office environments. I come to co-working spaces. I like them, but I'm anti being forced into an office if it's not required. And so that would be totally against my ethos and my brand to do that. So I wouldn't say I struggle to remain authentic, but the thing I do struggle with is, like you said, the market is so competitive right now. So what I'm conscious, I don't want to be like, hey, you can get a remote job and it's really easy. I don't think I do that. I want to explain to people it's possible, but it's going to be hard. It's going to be a journey. When I'm working with people in the program, I say to them, even before they sign up, hey, this is not going to be something I can hand to you on a silver platter. You're going to have days where you're feeling really crappy, where you're getting no response, where you're feeling rejected, and you're going to have other days that are really great and you're feeling positive. But it can knock your confidence, because you're getting lots of no's, which are essentially, you're getting rejected a lot. And this happens.
We're a channel dedicated mostly to a female audience. What do you believe are the unique challenges that female entrepreneurs and female digital nomads face compared to their male counterparts? And what is your advice on overcoming these challenges?
I think it would be, I mean, the safety aspect is kind of an obvious one. So if you're a female aspiring digital nomad, going out there into the world and feeling a bit apprehensive, especially if you're a little bit older and you're thinking, I've never done this before, it's scarier because I'm older. Joining something like a group, like there's a company that I partner with, Digital Nomad Adventures, and they're fantastic. They're getting a group of people together that want to do something like this, and actually it's almost giving you the starter pack and giving you the confidence, and being surrounded by other people that are doing it for the first time as well. So that's one thing to think about. And just take it easy. Like if you want to do it, but you're scared to go the other side of the world to a different continent, do it in your own country, or do it in like the next country across, and start off small and see how you feel, because it's not all sunshine and rainbows. There's negative aspects to digital nomad life. It's not all positive. So you need to figure out if the negatives, if the positives are going to outweigh the negatives. And for some, they won't, and that's completely fine. It doesn't mean you failed or that you're a bad person because this is not the route for you. It's just, everyone likes a certain level of comfort, and sometimes you're really out of your comfort zone when you're going into a whole new world.
Mm-hmm. That leads really well into my next question for you. Let's talk about the misconceptions, because I'm sure you encounter loads of them on a daily basis. So, what are the most common misconceptions about remote work that people come to you with? And how do you educate others about the realities of being a successful digital nomad?
There's the loneliness aspect, which we covered before. That's definitely a big common misconception. And the second one would be actually that you're sat on a beach with your laptop, which you see the photos. I've been guilty of posting them. I do them as well. But I probably spent less than 1% of my remote working life sat on a beach working. I don't want to get stand in my laptop. It's quite distracting with the beautiful people walking past, especially if you're in Bali. So it's not always the best environment. So that's a misconception, that you just do that. And the misconception is it's all play and no work. That isn't the way. Sometimes you'll spend 10 hours cooped up in a co-working space or in a phone booth like this. You're not going to see the things, and you'll get FOMO. So that's not actually a misconception, but I think that's something to point out is FOMO is real, and that's something I still battle with now. You feel like you're not doing enough traveling or seeing the world because you're working, and then when you're seeing stuff, you're feeling guilty that you're not working, especially if you're freelancing or you've got your own business. It can feel difficult to balance the two. If you're working for a company and it's quite set hours, it can actually make it easier sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you think most people have a false perception of what it means to be a remote worker, or do you think most people now, because it's becoming more popular, do you think people are more grounded now in understanding that it's not just play?
I don't know, because I haven't spoken to enough people at that site. So generally the people I've spoken with have already worked remotely before, and they might choose to get a work from anywhere job so they can travel. So they've already had a taste of what it's like to work remotely and actually manage their own schedule and things like that. So I'm not sure how to answer that.
Okay, I think it would be something interesting to dive into, if like, because there's always like bubbles of things, and when things become super popular, people maybe have this romanticized idea, but I feel like people are starting to really understand the realities of remote work, and it's amazing. You have your freedom, you can manage yourself where you are, what you're doing, but there are challenges, especially moving around a lot, internet connectivity, culture shock, like time zone differences, depending who you're working for and where you're working. So I think those are all fair things to keep in mind. Okay, let's talk a little bit about where things are headed in the world of remote work. So you've seen firsthand how the shift towards remote work has evolved over the years. What trends or changes do you predict in the future of remote work and entrepreneurship?
Oh, good question. I am an optimist, and I genuinely believe that in 10 years' time, hopefully sooner, companies won't say that they're remote. They'll have to say that they're on site or hybrid. It will be assumed that it's at least hybrid, and they will have to say if you're demanded in the office X number of days a week. I really believe there's going to be this shift. We're still going to have, and when I talk about this, I'm not talking about the roles that have to be on site. If you're a waitress or something, I'm talking about the roles that genuinely you can do online. So this is something that I believe, like, for example, a recruiter or a marketing manager that isn't doing on, like, it's just going to be a given that it's at least hybrid, I believe. So I really feel that shift. I think there's going to be the exception with the big corporate organizations. I feel like they're still going to be stuck in the dark ages a little bit. Give it 20 years and the dinosaurs that are managing those companies will have died, and then that's going to be the end of that.
New wave of management will come in and kind of see the
Yes.
benefits. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's so interesting. Okay, so you think it'll become the new normal, that people will just assume that
Yeah.
remote or at least hybrid is the
Yeah.
standard, and anything that deviates from that will need to be.
Yeah, I think hybrid will be the complete new normal. I would love to say that remote would be, but I do think there is a place, and I think some people actually need that office space. Like if you've got two kids at home and you want to take a space and need to have a quiet space to work with your colleagues, or if there's a lot of collaboration needed, I really feel like there's a space for that as and when. So I don't think the office is ever going to be dead. Also, the real estate giants get too much money for there being office space, so it's never going to be completely dead.
Yeah, yeah, and at least they need to buy themselves some time, I guess, to figure out
Yeah.
and re-strategize what to do with
Yeah.
all this office space. Okay, as we're gearing towards the end of our chat, if you had to sum up your journey and success in one word or phrase, what would it be and why?
You asked the question again.
Yes, if you had to sum up your journey in one word or phrase, what would it be and why?
Oh, it's a really tough question. What would it be in one? I would say empowering and just energizing to be able to do something from scratch and build this company on my own. I've had help, of course. I've had a lot of help, but like it's essentially been my baby. I feel like I've raised a child and I'm seeing the child grow, and it's exhilarating for me. I really get excited about it. And Remote Rebellion is my baby, whether that's a good or a bad thing. Like yeah, it's my baby.
That's amazing. Michelle, can you tell us a little bit about exactly what do you do at Remote Rebellion? So we've spoken about your journey, but just for the listeners at home, like what services do you offer? How do you help people find their dream remote job?
Sure, I'll give an analogy that might make it a bit easier. If you had a fitness or a weight loss goal, for example, except the weight loss goal is getting a remote job, I am essentially the personal trainer, the dietitian, the chef, the cheerleader, the fitness planner, the workout clothes. So I'm helping people from the very beginning figure out, if they don't know, what they want to do remotely, what they're good at, what their strengths are, the whole ikigai, figuring out what that looks like, and then working with them on a strategy in which to get that job in a nutshell. So that's working on optimizing their LinkedIn, their CV, how understanding how recruitment works, both internal, external, how important networking is to get referrals and get introductions, and then how to interview, negotiate a really good offer and benefits, and essentially land their dream remote job, whether that's freelance work or whether that's a job job.
JOB job, I love that. And how long does it normally take people? I know it's difficult to kind of give a fixed idea, but on average, like how long does this whole process normally take?
So the actual program that I take people through, it's between 12 and 16 weeks. Some people get a job within 2 weeks, some people 2 years. So
Mm.
I can give you an average, but honestly, I steer away from giving an average because everyone's situation is different, and the amount of effort that people put in is different too. So even if you've got two people, senior marketing manager roles, exactly the same experience, you might put in 5 hours a week into something, and someone might put 10 hours a week and really take the feedback, put that forward. So it's a multiplier effect. Whatever people put into this, they get out of it. So yes, there's an average, but I'm not going to give it because it doesn't really mean anything. So yeah, some of the people have got the first job that they applied to once we started working together. Within a couple of weeks, bish bash bosh, went through. There's a little bit of luck in there as well, to be honest. Like,
Yeah.
and then me connecting them to the right people. So yeah, it really can depend.
Well, I appreciate that actually. And this goes back to the point of authenticity. And I think with something that's so trendy and everybody is a lot of people are desperate out there for remote work, and you do get a lot of like scams and people who are going to take advantage of this desperation or this, this real need that people have. So I appreciate people like yourself who are just honest, and what you put in is what you get out, mixed with a little bit of luck and a little bit of patience and hard work. And yeah, I appreciate that. Michelle, can you
Thank
tell
you.
us where people can get in touch with your team, where people can find you, and any other news you'd like to share about Remote Rebellion?
Sure. Pretty much on all of the channels, remoterebellion.com, on Instagram and LinkedIn is where you'll find most of the content. And that's search Remote Rebellion, you'll come across on all the socials. We've actually got a masterclass coming up, a free masterclass. It's going to be live in early November. So look out for that. You'll be able to find that in the notes, I believe. So check those out.
Perfect. And on that note, Michelle, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure, and we hope to have you back in the future.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
For those of you who have been listening at home, if you have any questions you'd like us to discuss with Michelle in hopefully a future upcoming episode, please drop it in the comments section. If there are any topics you want us to deep dive into, we want to hear from you. Tell us anything that's on your mind when it comes to the world of living a global lifestyle. Please make sure to follow us on social media. Again, visit our website, herexpatlife.com, to see a comprehensive listing of all of our services. We are actually also partnering with Remote Rebellion. So if you're curious to see what they can offer you, click on the link in the description box, and that'll take you through a portal and a space where you can either book a chat with somebody or kind of see the offering from the Remote Rebellion team. Make sure to follow us on social media, like I said, click subscribe, and thank you so much for joining us. We hope to see you back soon.